collecting things. He's made a proposal for $18,000 to not only put all those items in a usable shape, but also do a needs assessment with staff so we could figure out what are the other GIS needs that we have for layers that would be most useful. So something that's out there. Then we also know kind of one time are going to be those budget deficits that we've identified or will be identifying for 26, 27, and 28. Those could use one-time funding requests. There's also a small number of ongoing budget requests that we've identified. One is the expansion of library hours. If we wanted to add a net new 6 hours to the existing 40 hours, it'd be about $70,000. If we wanted to, add another 12 hours to the library schedule, and there's a set schedule of when those 12 hours go, so it's expanding the number of hours, not the number of days. Just to answer that. But that would be $111,000, and then adding 16 hours would be $230,000. A different piece of the tech and officer safety for the police department is the body-worn cameras are now at end of life. They're failing. A number of them are failing, and they're past their warranty date. And so, as well as adding vehicle camera system, Chief went and identified a package deal to include and consolidate all of those contracts, and it would come out to about $38,000, and that would lock us in for 10 years. Toward the end of that, it goes up slightly. It goes up to like $45,000 in the out years, but it's a pretty sweet deal, at least in the early years. By combining a bunch of contracts, we're saving quite a bit. He could talk more about that. And then the last ongoing item is a permit tracking software. It's very difficult in this organization without a permit tracking software to track progress on permits. But the thing that's really killing us on this is that we don't have a very good way to then take the hours that Craig and others are working on projects and permits and turning that into a billable hours to charge back to the person seeking the permit. And so we had the conversation about the fee schedule earlier. This is the other side of that once we get the fees set at the correct level, this is the way to be able to track progress toward permits and to then do the billable hours for them. And so for $6,000 would get us 2 seats a year in Acela. And we're not looking just at Acela. It's kind of the large, what is it? The Cadillac. The Cadillac version. We'd love to find something simpler and less expensive, and we're continuing to quest after that. There may even be an opportunity within Civic Plus to add this, but as a round number, as a placeholder, this is probably as good as we could do. So those were some suggestions we came up with. You may have a whole bunch of your own that you're you would like to do as well.
I just have some questions on the one that you went over.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know if it's the proper time to ask it.
Do you want me to wrap up real quick? This is the last slide, and then we can go to questions.
Then I got my questions.
Yeah,
all right,
so
I'll do that.
What I really want to emphasize is this, though, that still, this is not changing. The overall financial position remains really sound and really stable here in Clayton. This is we're actually very insulated from a lot of what's happening in other jurisdictions. You may be aware of neighboring cities that are having real financial struggles, where people are talking about layoffs, and that's significant. And we're not in that position. We do have reserves, and it's really a question about how those reserves get used, right? And so, if we look at 27, we could take that deficit and cut it in half with the recommended adjustments that we provided you in detail at attachment B. Fund balance reserves remain strong. We can't emphasize that enough. We know how we got here. The question is, what do we want to do going forward, I think, as a city? And so the fund balance at the end of 26 is likely to be around $6 million, but that reserve policy minimum is 2.28 for this year. And for next year, it's slightly different, a little lower reserves, and a little bit high, the minimum would go up because our revenues go up. So that becomes key. And then we found about $2.7 million in one time and about between $100,000 and $275,000 in ongoing expenses that you might want to consider funding from some of those reserves. Now I'm done.
Okay, well, I'm going to address my last question now, and that's when you came to the fund balance, and you say revenues appear to be stronger in outer years. Was that what you said?
Actually, what I was saying about the current economic conditions, I think I'm a little nervous in the short term about revenues, just because of the sources for them.
Yeah.
I won't say. I think our growth rate for revenues at between 2.5% and 3%. I'm hoping we get there. I'm hoping we're going to be able to get to 2.5%. I'm afraid they might be a little lower than that. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm not trying to, but I'm also not sugarcoating it either.
Okay, so, well, you're hitting on a point that had been brought up by at least one or two other individuals in terms of the fact that we've authorized a utilization of 40% of the reserves.
Right.
It doesn't appear that we're even coming anywhere near that, correct?
That is correct.
So, and yet they get, as we use them, aren't they being replenished? They're not?
They're not. There's some interest being drawn because they're invested, and we're in Treasury bills, and they're running around 3.8 to 4% gains on their value. But we take that money and we allocate it into the budget on a quarterly basis. We don't take it out of the fund. We leave it there so it's continuing to accrue interest and build.
Okay.
But we from a booking standpoint, we book it into the budget and we allocate it out based on the source of those funds. And so to say it's growing, not unless you get something new, a big new source of money. So, and those aren't coming anymore. So ARPA's not happening again. Those kinds of chunks that were put into reserves by this council, and wisely so. If you didn't have something to spend it on, might as well save it for when you're ready. So it's not growing in that big sense.
Okay. Well, right now, yes, we're going through a very challenging time nationally on revenues. But at some point, I mean, Mr. Wan supervises a rather large entity. What do you see on the horizon out there? Is there going to be some turn, and at some point revenues will increase and replenish the things that we have spent money on?
No.
You don't see it?
No. I mean, if I could really predict it, I probably wouldn't be in this job. But
Okay.
so it's kind of a coin toss. But I would say, if you look at our source of funding,
yes,
it's generally property tax. Property tax
given
increases year over year, capped. There's strong inflationary pressure. Inflation usually only ratchets one way. It exceeds revenue growth. So unless something very significant changes to the California landscape, we'd probably face certain challenges going forward, I'd say.
Okay, now let me get to some of these specific things as opposed to the overall. Back to the Police Department Tech and Officer Safety, $32,000. Firearms. Define that. Do the officers have their own firearms, or is the Police Department giving them firearms or utilizing department-owned firearms?
Yeah, thank you. Mayor, council, staff. So for firearms, we purchased the duty firearms, which we issue to officers, back in 2014. So they're currently 12 years old. So they've exceeded their life expectancy. And we still maintain them, we still make sure they're safe and all that, but there's a certain life expectancy to the firearm. So we're at the point now where those have to be replaced.
Okay, and I guess my question is, when did we switch from having the officer provide their own firearm versus the city providing it?
A long time ago.
Yeah.
30 years ago, the city provided mine, 1990. City provided mine in 1990.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's typically, historically, when most agencies started doing that.
Right.
We have a policy where police officers can provide their own firearm under certain parameters.
Okay.
However, we still have an obligation to make a duty firearm available to officers. Should there be an issue, should there be something where their firearm goes out of commission, we have a duty to make sure that we have sufficient firearms for all officers.
I understand. Tactical gear. Amplify on that a little.
Sure, no problem. So a couple things we need to address. One is we had a couple years ago we updated our ballistic helmets to the most current models and safety standards. One of the gaps we identified is that we don't have proper face protection for those ballistic helmets. So we identified that as a need. So that's one of the issues. The other is spike strips for ending pursuits, safely ending pursuits.
Right.
We currently have one mechanism, possibly two mechanisms that we have in place. They're carried in the supervisor vehicle. We don't have those available to all the officers, and they're rather cumbersome. So this is to upgrade that so that every officer has that capability in their patrol vehicle. And then also, those are the safety items.
What's the mobile data for low mileage police vehicles?
Yeah, so we currently have another police vehicle. It's a 2019. When we purchased our new vehicles, we used some of the equipment out of that to equip the brand new patrol vehicle.
Okay.
This vehicle is still viable. I think it has something around 40,000 miles, still in excellent shape. So we've identified a need to equip it with a mobile data computer and mount, and make sure that it's a fully functional patrol vehicle should we need it. So should we have vehicles go down or have one involved in a collision or something like that.
Okay, and then the other area is the Grove and community park cameras. You want to put because right now the community park doesn't have any cameras, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so and then the ones that are at the Grove Park, those are outdated, some not working, no replacement parts, and all those things that go in.
Yeah, so the Grove, I'll address that first.
Okay.
The cameras are working. We have identified that they're insufficient, though, in order to either conduct follow-up investigations or to accurately identify issues going on in the park. There's no technology overlay on the camera. They're essentially dumb cameras, and it takes significant amount of staff time. If we have an incident that occurs, let's say over a weekend or something like that, and we're investigating that, it's basically one for one. We have to have an officer sit there and go hour by hour going through video feed, which is very cumbersome and not dependable in the long term. So we identified that
as very productive, I would say.
And not productive, yes.
Right.
So we've identified that as a significant gap, especially given the prominence of the Grove Park in our community. And then the other is Clayton Community Park. It's a valuable asset in our community, and currently we have no ability to either monitor or to go back and investigate if something were to occur at that, or to see what type of traffic's going in and out, and that's a significant exposure.
Yeah, because that has appeared on a number of problem areas back in the past, well before both Chris and you were here. I know that there's been issues up there, and that would be very helpful. The last thing I had is on the updating of the emergency operations plan. Glad to hear that finally happened. That's one thing where it's one of those books that are on the shelf and never gets looked at.
Yes.
And there's some real critical issues based upon just the evolution of time and where we are today. So compliments on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions on the, wait, did you conclude your presentation?
Sorry. Yeah, I did. I think what we were looking for perhaps tonight, and depending on how you'd like to proceed, you'll recall back to the budget hearing where we had an attachment that allowed you to share with us, give us some direction on which of these or other items you would like to add so that then we can collect those, see that there's consensus, and then we can add those in and bring them back with a final set of budget adjustments that would include all of these at the April 21st meeting. Skylar's got that spreadsheet queued up and ready to go if you want to. But this list is available. Skylar's ready to do that if we want to switch over to that. That was what I was going to suggest would be our next step for the process.
Help me understand on the expenditures, salaries and benefits, you have 190,000 less. Does that mean less?
On the expenses, it's $190,000 less in expenditures.
How did we come to that?
Well, I think part of that is the result of some of those staff changes that we've made where we had some
Saving
other
money.
assumptions, so we saved money
Okay.
in a number of those. And so that's really how we got there.
Okay. Thanks.
I
Restructuring.
just have a couple of things. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you done? Okay. Looking at library exterior paint, I've been sitting on the Library Foundation Board of Directors for 4 years. Nobody's ever mentioned the exterior, but we have a phase 2 and a phase 3 of our refresh that is completely unfunded. So I would just throw that out there that rather than paint the outside, use some money, because we have it's almost $1 million gap if we were to implement everything that the county and the architect are recommending in phase 2 and 3. Phase 1 is covered. Hopefully we're going to be starting, I hate to say September, but we're hoping.
Should be.
Yes, and that is in part from money that the city has put in, the foundation and the living trust that the library has. The other thing is, I thought we talked at one point about facility rental software, and I didn't see that on the list.
That's part of Civic Plus.
Oh, it is part of
Yep.
Civic Plus. Okay,
Yes.
check. And then the extended hours for the library. And I know we've brought this up several times before because it is an ongoing request every year. People don't like that it's closed on Sunday and Monday and certain nights. But I just think it's where we've always hesitated, correct me if I'm wrong, is that to use the reserves, we need an ongoing funding source. And to me, that's almost better use with our 1% sales tax that we've been talking about so that it's sustainable. And to pull it out of reserve, I would hate to add the hours and then have to take them back if we didn't have money in succeeding years. So I don't know how everybody feels about that. And I know we do have a pending request from the library right now, correct?
We do. They sent it to me late last week. I agree with you. My recommendation is this is something that would be fantastic for this community to implement and extend the hours. I mean, we know how heavily used this library is. But I would also recommend that we don't do that unless we have additional ongoing funding to help support that versus getting to a point maybe 3-4 years down the road where you go, just kidding, we have to pull those hours away from you now because we don't have the ongoing funds to support it.
Not good. So a couple other things on my list, I'll wrap up here, is I'd like to see us run the fountain every weekend. I feel like I'm a broken record on the fountain, and it is important. I think it's a beautification project. I think it looks absolutely stunning when it's on. I was very disappointed it wasn't on for Easter, and I'm hoping we can have a separate discussion about that. And I know that there's costs involved in running it every weekend, and so maybe reserve funding is not the best, be something more sustainable. We talked about the baseball field, and the other one I had on my list, I'm hoping at some point, are we going to come back? We said this at the conclusion of all of our budget meetings last year, that we were going to come back and have a completely separate discussion about sidewalk repair and paving. We were not exactly sure what our paving index was. I think we had two different reports, one a little better, one a little bit worse. And then are we going to have that separately at some point? Because we're good for 26, but not for 27 or 28, right? Dennis?
Yes, because we need to establish what we're going to do. If we're going to stay with the every other year paving project, are we going to do every year? What are we willing to address in terms of, that's why that $100,000 in the chart is to do some repairs, but it's mainly to also to do exploration of what we need to do throughout the city. We know we have non-compliant curb cuts in some areas for accessibility. Determining sidewalks that are damaged and need to be repaired. Are they our responsibility? Is it the homeowner adjacent? Was it caused by our trees? So there's some work to be done around that area. But yeah, it certainly needs to come back and be a discussion item. I would hope that we have a wonderful staff person. I keep saying that, but that is the goal, is to bring somebody on who this is their wheelhouse, so to speak, and can lead this and make recommendations to council. The best way to utilize our funding on an ongoing basis for both of those.
Because that 100,000 is just a study. That's not even doing the work, right?
I probably close to the study. There may be some residual to do some work, but it's to, we know pieces and parts. Pine Hollow needs to be done. Our trees are destroying that. We have that on the, but how many miles of sidewalk do we have that we don't know? Oops, that's kind of what we need to address.
Right. All right, that's all I had on my list. I mean, and the signage at Endeavor Hall would be a nice to have, but to me, $8,000, I don't know. We'd have to look at the rest of our priorities.
The one thing I neglected to bring up is that you might want to go to public comment before you start considering what to put on that chart, so that if you want to get some feedback from the public, before you start kind of giving us direction on possible funding of programs.
I just want to see if there's questions or.
I wanted to amplify on the running of the pump there, the waterfalls, or what have you. Have we ever defined what it costs per hour to run that thing? Because that's been one of those items that have been always, well, I think it's this.
So we went back, I shouldn't say we, Dennis and Jennifer went back and looked at days that we actually ran it, looked at those bills for PG&E, which is an interesting process because rate fluctuates throughout the day, right? Down to the brass tacks, it's $400 for 8 hours.
For 8 hours? Well, that's a heck of a lot less than the $300 an hour that a former occupant of your office used to tell us. Okay.
A few occupants ago. A few occupants ago.
So if you were to run it every weekend plus, I think we figured out 12 holidays, you're looking at about $50,000 a year to run that fountain. Yeah.
But you said $400?
400.
For 8 hours?
Correct.
Any other questions for staff?
I have some. I have a quick question about it's on the ongoing budget request slide. Chief had mentioned, and I think you did I think Dennis did in your report or your presentation, it was at the end of life that we're locked in for 10 years. Did I get that right? At the almost $38,000? I guess what I'm trying to understand is, if it's an ongoing budget request, is this an annual cost? I don't understand. So they're going to get replaced every year? They wouldn't all just be replaced all at once?
No, I'm happy to address
Okay.
that. Yeah, no, it's confusing. So I actually have something to reference because it's confusing.
Okay.
So let me pull that up here.
It sounds like it's just annual licensing.
It is. So there's several components to it. So currently we have, let's see here if I got this right. We currently have 3 contracts with Axon. They're 3 independent a la carte contracts. They expire, they have to be renewed in 2029. So we have to, that's a horizon for us, right? Event horizon for us. That totals currently, what we're currently paying is about $35,000 a year for our current technology package. That's storage, equipment, all that kind of stuff. In 2029, all those things will have to be replaced, which becomes very expensive because we're paying whatever those costs will be at that time and have to renew those contracts. The approach in the past has been to a la carte those different components. For example, body cams. We purchased those body cams in 2019. They're 2 generations old now, and they're no longer serviceable. So, and they're not under warranty. And even if a part breaks on them, we have to buy a whole new camera, of which they're phasing out anyways. The same, our tasers, which we purchased a few years ago, we're in the same boat. In other words, we own those properly. In a few years, we're going to have to completely overhaul that, and also with the accompanying components of that. And then we have our storage, and then our fleet cameras, which are in our vehicles. We also purchase those a la carte. So in a few years, we're going to have to wholesale replace those as well because they wear out over time. By purchasing, again, a la carte, brand new body cams, which need to be, it's a critical thing at this point, that would require our costs to be about $37,000 a year. I'm sorry, $39,000 a year buying those a la carte. That's what our load would be on an annualized basis. By consolidating all the contracts into one contract, aligning all those time periods, and securing that pricing for 10 years. Over the next 5 years, we would reduce our annual cost by $2,000 and have new equipment. That equipment, as part of that contract, would be automatically refurbished for us during that 10-year period. So several different intervals, but essentially we'd get new body cams today, and then in 5 years we'd get brand new body cams at no additional cost. That's already built into the contract. Same way with the fleet cameras, same with our taser weapons as well. So it's a way of consolidating everything into one contract, and it would actually save us about $10,000 over the next 5 years. And then that would be kind of absorbed into the previous or the next 5 years. And it's all locked in at today's pricing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What happens at the end of 10?
So at the 10, we would look at a renewal.
Do we get new equipment?
Yeah, so at that time, there's a couple different ways to go about it. At that time, if we said, you know what, we don't want to go into a renewal type contract, we would still keep the equipment. The equipment would be ours.
But it doesn't, the life is not.
The life is not there, and then we'd have to look at buying new equipment. Anyways, at some point, you know, depending on how quickly those fell off. We would still have to renew the data storage component of that, right? Because otherwise you have a piece of equipment you can't use, right? And you have to have that data storage.
Okay.
Does that answer?
That brings up another question on
Yeah.
equipment. Have you completed the encryption function of all the radios?
Yes, that was completed several months ago.
Okay.
Yep, along with the rest of the county.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm done with the chief, thank you. And then the other question that I had is on the one-time budget request piece. I won't go into each of them, but I am curious in general, how much of the reserves are we using for operational, like that are ongoing operational expenses? Are there any? And I'm thinking contractors, anything.
Right. So I think when we created that list, we really did truly mean for the longer list to be one-time expenses.
Okay.
Basically all in costs for whatever that is, whether it's the sidewalk plan, whether it's the other things, the baseball field. We would see those as all in, and those are estimates. I mean, I'm going to give you my normal caveat, which is that number definitely isn't right. but it's a placeholder for what it will be, and you'll get to see what it actually is when we come back for a contract or whatnot.
Okay.
So, I think that we really did try to separate out the one-time versus the ongoing. That's why we created the 2 slides.
Okay.
As a way to really try to faithfully represent what's one time, truly one time.
Okay, so then a different way to ask it, have any of the reserves been used for ongoing operational costs to date?
To balance the budget, yeah.
Balancing the budget, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. And then, on the expanding the baseball fields one, I know it's a wish, but where exactly is that going? Are we at CCP upper field or lower field?
Lower.
Oh, okay.
So Little League has not shared the plan with me, but they actually had a plan developed
Okay,
of what it looks like. They had a cost estimate from a few years ago. According to them, they approached the city manager, and the city manager said, no, we're not interested, so they put it away.
Okay.
The folks I met with, spring break is this week, they're gone, so we're going to reconnoiter next week, get the plans, and continue that dialogue of what that looks like. Their cost estimate from a couple of years ago was $400,000, but they felt, again, reduced with sweat equity and having members of Little League that are in the trades being able to assist. So my placeholder was $500. I feel we can do it for much less, especially if we can partner with the community on a community build for that park. The grass is existing. We're talking about some fencing, water fountains, dugouts, pitching, or batting cages, and cutting the infield and moving some irrigation so that you don't have sprinkler heads in the infield. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're developing and grading and starting from ground zero. So I think it's a very viable option, but there's more to come on that too.
okay. I just couldn't picture it. That's why I was curious more than anything. And then I think my last question is, can you tell me, after they finish doing the study for the sidewalks, whoever does this, then what?
Then we would have a list of what needs to happen. So kind of 2 pieces. If it's our city responsibility, getting an engineer's estimate on what that cost, bringing that back to council, what would you like to do? If it is frontage of private ownership and they're responsible, it would be up to code enforcement to provide those notices of, hey, this is a trip hazard, it's not accessible or passable, and notifying them and going down that process.
Okay, and so I know that when your predecessor, the interim city manager, was here right about the time you were coming on, he was talking about a sidewalk policy, working with the residents, a pilot program. Did anything happen with that? Did it die?
I believe Larry presented it to council and council said no.
Don't do it? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Thank you.
Other questions for staff? All right, public comment. If you have public comment on this item, now is the time. This is item 8A. I do have 1 speaker card. If anyone else would like to have a comment on this item, feel free. Mr. Hayden, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm here to address the one-time reserve funding requests. And I got involved in this looking at some particular needs we've got on what I consider on an urgent basis. It's an outgrowth of the Firewise program that Councilmember Tillman initiated some time ago to try to help each of the individual homeowners reduce their exposure to fires. And with the upcoming fire season coming, with the warm weather that's expected and the growth that's expected, we think Clayton certainly will be exposed to fire, if not this year, certainly next year. And we have to make sure that we properly advise our residents on what to do if there does become a major wildfire that approaches our city limits. And I think we need to learn from Paradise and Santa Rosa. You need to have those plans well thought out and executed and everyone on board with the same plan. And initially when I saw this list of budget requests, I didn't see any unique request for an emergency evacuation plan. And I have called Dennis a couple of times and asked him if one existed. And we weren't under the impression that a current one does exist. And then he did upgrade the list tonight with the funding request and did add in the update of the 2019 City Emergency Operations Plan. And I would certainly hope that an emergency evacuation plan would be part of that plan, because we have to make sure we get the fire department, the police department, everyone on board to how to quickly react to a potential threat that our city is exposed to, and work with our neighboring communities. I understand there is a county effort underway to do some overall regional planning so that we can properly utilize very efficiently the resources necessary for all of our communities if we're facing a similar fire threat. So I want to make sure we do get approval to move this up in staff priority and get an urgent need then for the development of an emergency response plan for Clayton, and get the communities involved and certainly develop a good, quick communication plan on how to get the word out. Dennis did share with me some excellent new upgrades that's going to be available in the near future on how we can get warnings out to our community. And this is the type of warning I would expect to utilize that type of system. So I just want you to make sure that that's on the list of these, the use of reserve funding, because that's an urgent community need that I think we need to address, and the council certainly needs to set that aside and direct the staff to work on that activity. Thank you.
Thank you. If any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back for discussion. So one of the ways I wanted to frame this is, does this actually represent a funding request, or is this more of an informational thing so that we could take note and then come back at another time? Because I don't feel like you're asking for approval of any specific thing.
Not asking for approval, we're asking for direction. If you want us to include it in the budget adjustment for 27, that's what now is a good time to do that.
Okay.
So we are asking for direction. Again, we'd bring back anything you get consensus for. We'd bring that back with the package on the 21st for approval.
Okay. Anyone have anything that they'd like to raise? I have a few comments that I was hoping I could make, but I don't. Okay, so in regards to some of these one-time requests, kind of similar to what Councilmember Triviano was saying on the exterior paint of this building, is that on a schedule of like how often we paint our buildings? Probably not. That's almost rhetorical. So I will echo what I said earlier. All of the things, these just regular maintenance items, should just be on the schedule. Because just like everyone's house, you have to repaint your house once in a while. You have to repaint your buildings. We should essentially establish what that time frame is, and then just do it on a time frame. Like, I think that's a better way to handle it. I don't know if anyone here recalls the last time this building was painted. I certainly don't, and I'm not sure what the useful life on exterior paint is either. So those are the kind of questions that we would want before we say, yeah, at least for myself. I think the way that we position this, I think, is very important. And if we're talking about one-time funding, I think it's very important that we isolate the funding out of the general fund. So if we're like, for whatever items we say we want to do it, when you look at, if we say we want to do X, Y, Z in 27, when you look at the end of 27 in the general fund, you shouldn't see these coming through the general fund. Like, because I know it is general fund money, that's fine. But if there's a way to isolate the activity so that when you look at I forget what the schedule is in the ACFR, but when you look at it, These will obviously create a large deficit in FY27, right? But I think that would be misleading unless you understand that we are choosing to use reserves to do some of these deferred maintenance items and other items. So I don't know what the prescribed way to do it would be, but I think it would be very useful for the community to have these set aside. So we say, like, these are the projects that we are taking on, whatever they happen to be, so that it's clear that this is not a part of our regular ongoing operations. So you guys can think about how you want to do that. I don't need to know, but
Okay.
I think
We
that
do
would
have
be
we do have a fund with projects in it.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you're talking, that sounds exactly like what you're
it would
talking
just be a
about.
good way to isolate it so that it's very clear to the community what we're actually doing. Because part of this is not only doing the things that we're supposed to do, but demonstrating that we're actually doing them. And that would be a good way to do it, I think. Okay, so that was kind of like my main point. The rest of these things, I mean, is in one of the slides, we say that staff has identified 2.69 million in one-time funding requests. The things on this page don't add up to 2.7 million. They're like 1.8.
That included the deficit that we pulled out, that we changed to TBD.
But the 2026 is incorrect, right?
The
At 952.
2026 is, yeah, we're not staying
Right.
with that. But for the total, where I did state that did include at that time the calculation for that included the 950.
No, I mean, I know that.
Okay.
But it shouldn't say this number here then.
It should not.
Right? Correct. Okay, so I was just like, I'm doing math, and I'm like, that doesn't match. So, okay. For the sidewalk study, which it's a lot of money for a study. I don't know how to ask this in a, does it increase our liability to know? Should we not know?
No, you should have a plan and you should be working towards that plan. It
Right,
doesn't
but-
mean that once we identify it, we have to do it all at once. But if we identify it and we know and we are doing incremental work, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way in previous
My understanding is, like,
agencies,
if
that's how
you-
we addressed it.
If you have a known issue and you do not take action, it's a lot different than if you have an unknown issue and do not take action. But Mom,
Because
please opine.
Cities have millions of miles of roadway and sidewalks and nobody can fix it, but they all have ADA transition plans. They have these kinds of studies in place, and you have to allocate funds annually to address it. Doesn't mean you have to do it all next year.
I mean, if you're testifying and someone says, did you know about this? And I didn't know about that particular item, but we do have a plan to address all items, is a lot better answer than, yeah, I knew about that one and I chose not to do it. So you tell me.
It's good to have the plan, but I would encourage on these to have the funding to implement the plan as quickly as possible. It won't absolve you of all liability if we know about it and have a plan to fix it 5 years later.
Okay. But I guess my question is more like, is it more defensible to not know?
I don't think so.
Well, it's when there's a dangerous condition, one of the elements is, did you know about it?
That's
so
what I'm
I think
saying.
that's to your point.
That is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, if we already know about it, and part of this is prioritizing the level, then
Well, I mean, we could assume that there is a level of known unknowns. And so one of the criteria for liability attaching is did you know about it? And so if we didn't know about that particular one, we could truthfully answer, we did not know about it. I think that puts us in a better position. If we happen to know about it, then we should take action. That's what I'm saying. So I don't know if the study itself actually helps us unless we're prepared to address it.
Well, on top of that, then my concern is the study's 100,000. We're estimating what is the overwhelming cost of repairing And then do we come up with a plan that's like a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan? And if something happens in between, it's something that's been identified, but we haven't fixed it yet? I don't know that.
So that one I'm a little questionable on, because I think it presents risk and we don't really have the means to address what it would find. So that's me.
I get what you're saying. If someone trips on a sidewalk and breaks their skull open and we didn't know about it, that doesn't mean we just go,
No, it does not.
right?
But the negligence claim depends on knowing.
You know, so, yeah.
Yes. I think we all agree that public safety is key. I think that we know that because several people have mentioned it to us, we've seen it ourselves driving around, that there are buckled sidewalks, et cetera. We know that these exist. I would prefer that we know where they are and put a plan in place to address them. And I frankly, I'm not going to say I don't care how much it costs, because I do, but we need to fix them. So I don't like that it's $100,000. I hope it actually comes in less than that. If we're going to be using 311 and having people identify things for us, maybe that cuts down on that cost too before this is actually implemented. But not doing something is not an option for me. We have to do this. That's my 2 cents on that one line item. I don't know if we're really calling it a sidewalk safety program. That's why I asked, then what? What happens after we get the information? But we have to do something about all of those routes. Driving here, before you get to Marsh Creek Road, there's a part of the sidewalk that is like this when you're driving by. People probably don't realize it unless you're walking over, but it's buckled. That should be fixed this week. I walk over it every day. Yes. It should be fixed this week.
Right.
It's a problem.
But I do think that there is some risk in identifying and then not fixing, because we have no idea what the price tag of doing all this work might be. And I kind of like the 311 self-reporting system, where people are saying, hey, this is a nuisance in my neighborhood, needs to be fixed. My
concern is when negligence attaches and the liability, because we were informed. So
Well, and 311 is going to do that. If we don't have
That will do
funding
it
for
automatically.
availability to fix that, when I get that report that this sidewalk segment is a trip hazard,
well, then
and we
then
go,
we know. So once we know, then we can
but if we don't
address.
have the available funding for that,
Yes, but incurring a $100,000 fee to, that one seems less. It has some cons to it, is what I'm saying. So beyond just the cost. So everything else, I think I was okay with. The one thing is, does the items that you identified earlier, Chris, on the other presentation for the other major projects, those aren't here. But isn't those going to be using some one-time dollars too, to like the sidewalk, let's say? So the Mitchell Canyon sidewalk, that's going to use one-time dollars. It's going to happen in 27 if you cross your fingers just right. But it's not on this part.
so that was addressed in the CIP. It's listed with Measure J funds
Okay.
and transportation fund.
Okay. So the other items, so there shouldn't be an overlap if there's a separate funding source.
Correct. The only one that we may have to bring back is the Cardinate Trail. We don't know what that number is yet, so that may be something that we bring back and say we need additional funding for that piece.
Okay.
Well, and then again, all I can say is I have no problem with any of the list, but the library exterior painting, I'd like to really see us spend the money on the inside, not the outside. I pass by the library every day. I really, I mean, and we've got, you're getting, Geneva Moss was here earlier, thousands of people come. This is like our community center. And to me, the interior, way more important. And we just do not have funding sources for all of Phase 2, and I don't think we have any for Phase 3. So I'd rather,
How short is phase 2?
Chris, you have the most recent numbers we did?
Phase 1, we have a gap of $20,000. That's
Right.
nothing. Phase 2 is about $400,000. The main component in Phase 2 is reconfiguring the circulation desk up front, putting some different scanners and that kind of thing for self-checkout. And that total for that entire front area is $110,000.
Yep.
Okay.
109.
Yeah, I think I concur with.
So
Councilmember
maybe
Triviano.
could you come back to us with the Phase 2 and the Phase 3 number for the library refresh, and we'll see, like, we're using 171,000 now, or we hope to by September. It was in the 26, we might have to move that to the 27. And then what we could use in 27 and 28.
And I'm good with all the. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
All right, I switched topics.
You're good with all the what?
I'm good with all the police stuff.
Yeah.
too. I don't know. I think
Can I
that's.
say something?
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to say this for next year's budget. Dennis got it down to 345. Let's all remember that we have a rebate coming from Climatech, which is close to $300,000.
It's Fed, but
That could,
yeah,
pardon?
it's federal.
From the federal government. And that should just about even up the 2027 budget if he keeps on track. The things on this list, I agree with Councilmember Trupiano about the library. The law enforcement stuff, I think should be in the police budget. Those should be budgeted items. And I know it's not in there for the new one, but it's going to cost more. But those are all police things that are required.
Right. So it would get budgeted in the department budget.
Oh, it would?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for the equipment and stuff. I think on that, because it's single purpose. Now I'm going against what I said earlier about project funding,
No.
but it does seem like one of those things where you are dedicating it to a specific purpose for field use.
For a department.
It's not the same as the sidewalk project or the library
the
thing.
same.
It's completely different than that. So I think we would integrate that
Yeah.
right into
No, that
the PD
makes sense.
budget.
And the emergency operations plan, that's also going to be part of that telephone plan for the police or the automated phone that will tell people there's a fire or an emergency somewhere, please go out this road.
Yeah. So some of that's in the Civic Plus
Right.
program we have with mass notifications, but I think on the emergency operation plan, it would be a professional services contract that would be signed for somebody to develop the plan. Again, would be in the PD's department budget.
And just one thing about the sidewalks. You know, the city that I was a councilman with a long time ago, we had a company we hired. They did the exact same thing. Wasn't $100,000 though. But that list they prioritized because they're professional people. So we went down as much as we could each year to pay for it. And somebody did have an accident on one that was on their list. The attorney came to the city and said this, and we showed him the list that's prioritized by this company, and if you want to take us to court, go ahead, but I don't know of any judge, while the city is trying, they can't do all of it. And he said, oh, you guys didn't make that list? And I said, no, it was this company, feel free to call them. Never heard from them again, because we were making the effort to do it. Because anybody can sue anybody for anything. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
I do have one other question just before we conclude. On the baseball field, I do think it's a great idea. I know Little League has always wanted to partner with us on that. Is that also a potential revenue source for us by renting it out? Like, will some of that, by adding another field, offset?
Yeah, there is revenue to be made during the season, and any other user that wants to use that field, whether it's soccer, baseball, kickball, whatever, yes. The preliminary conversation I had with Little League was not about free use of the field, but if they're going to be the partner in that, having the first right to that
First right
field.
of right field,
Which
yeah.
is,
Yeah, I think that's a great discussion. I'm not sure if that's allowed, but, it's fine.
And
When that
Also-
field was first put in, I was here, that field was built like that to handle not just Little League, but Babe Ruth and kids older. And it has to be a certain size. We had tournaments here that were actually paid for by baseball organizations because we had a beautiful ballpark. And if we put a field somewhere else that's going to cut off that right field line, left field line, maybe that backstop could be movable. So if another organization wants to use it that has 16, 17, 18-year-old, it'll be a legal field. I don't know if we could do that, but maybe you can look at that when we get the plans.
tournament, you won't be doing bigger kids in tournaments out there. If you don't have, we don't have the proper facilities to run tournaments.
Okay.
We don't even have outfield fences. And
That's true.
for tournament play,
Well, you
that
talked about
is,
fences, so I figured maybe
Yeah.
that'd be extended. No way. Okay.
And just speaking of sports, the last thing I just thought about, I didn't have on my original list, is the folks that have the contract at the gym. Isn't that contract coming up for renewal in '27?
I think our city manager is engaged with discussion.
Oh, you are? Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other, do you have what you need? Does anyone have any more
Yeah, the
input?
only other thing I'd say is anything that is safety related. So I know for years people were had concern about the path that's outside of Mount Diablo Elementary School. Where are we right now? Wherever we are. It's one of these directions. Yeah, it's over there. It's up there. No, it's that way. Yes, above that, that there's no fence there. So if we're just thinking about, I haven't been up there lately, but people complain that it's just a drop off, that the safety railing that should be up there is missing. So anything that we are, I'll make a list and I'll send it to you. But anything that is safety related is what I'm going to be adding on there, whether it's to Keith's point, I'm sorry, Mr. Hayden's point of evacuation procedures, et cetera. I will leave that to the experts, but anything that is safety related, I'm going to add to the list because I have a lot of emails over the years that people were complaining about things in this general area in downtown to keep safer, especially around the school.
Yeah, I think that area, I'm not sure if it applies to that particular section of the pathway with the cliff. But I know that there is a complication that, once you start touching things that aren't ADA compliant, then you need to bring them ADA compliant.
Yeah.
So touching those could be costly, I would say. So it's always a trade-off in that one. Definitely like with the railroad tracks on the
Yeah, I
on the
wasn't
path
going
down.
that far necessarily, just the drop off that there's no fence.
Yeah.
There used to be, and it's not there anymore.
Did there used to be a fence?
According to people who have written to us, that is what, I don't know, because I've never walked around that.
I mean, it's been a little while for me since my kids were in school there, but I could have
Yeah.
just been misremembering. Okay. Any other thoughts to share with staff? Do you have what you need, or do
So
you need more guidance?
can I summarize it real quick and make sure I got it right? So it seems like people are, by and large, okay with the bulk of the list. The couple things that were specified was the library exterior paint, X-nay on that, and go and talk about the funding for phases 2 and 3 of the interior work that we're doing.
But still put it on the schedule.
And put it on a schedule, yes. But the exterior painting on a
Yes.
schedule, yes. That I'll work on all the schedules for all the pieces. And then on the sidewalk safety program, I think what we're really talking about here is there some way in which we get an inventory of that, whether it's through 311 or some other system, so we know what the priority safety projects are, and that we do that, but not necessarily engage in a full contracted study.
Can I make a request? Is there a way that you could succinctly summarize the point that I'm trying to make with regard to the liability question, like, and send it to council? Like, just the potential risk that there is? Okay, thank you.